Part 4. Infinite Doomsday Start Draws Luodu Mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 31. Could it be that the so-called ghosts are biological weapons created by the Lost Ones? Just like the biochemical world that created zombies, the Lost Ones civilization here also lost to another kind of man-made monster? Although these ghosts are not very capable in terms of individual ability, and only a few points are given to those who die at the hands of Ruger, he does not mean to underestimate them. Think about it, they are all rampant. Is it more difficult to deal with zombies transformed from humans, or these biochemical insects of various shapes? Facing enemies like zombies, humans can still build a fortress surrounded by fences and barbed wire, and use cold and hot weapons. But if faced with these insects that can drill out from any gap and kill people by drilling into their mouths while they are asleep, well, no wonder the Lost Ones died so cleanly, and the surviving population is not as many as the living people in the fragments of the Dark World. Facing enemies with unpredictable shapes such as amoeba and highly toxic paralyzing leeches, incendiary bombs are really the best. No wonder the Shadow Lynx, whose memory is declining like Alzheimer's, didn't remember anything else, but only remembered to ask Tia to make more incendiary bombs. Thinking of this, Lugger suddenly became curious. Before, he was so foul-mouthed and guarded against his old noise like a pervert. Why hasn't he been noisy for a long time? Huh? Luch, why are you looking for it? I finally have some peace and quiet. Although Tia looked reluctant when she heard this, she still reached out and patted the shadow that had been shrinking on her shoulder. As a result, the cat's head shrank to the size of an apple, and except for a few hesitant sounds, there was no reaction at all. Hey, Noisy, what's wrong with you? Did you eat something dirty and start losing your memory again? What? Ruger added some fuel to the fire around him and asked, you said again. It has been like this before. Is that how its memories became incomplete? Yeah, Tia looked at the kitten's head on her shoulder and nodded worriedly, but shook her head again. It's not quite the same. It fell asleep normally those few times and didn't get up on time. It slept for several days in a row and started forgetting things when it woke up. Really? Is it because of a stomachache? Ruger nodded thoughtfully. What did it eat? Well, what does it usually eat? Gemstones, Tia said, those magic gemstones. Oh, the shadow pet eats magic stones, what a classic setting. Ruger complained in his heart and subconsciously glanced at Tia's bag. He remembered the spoils he had stuffed into Tia before. No, those magic gems are not missing, it didn't eat them. Tia also quickly understood Ruger's worries and hurriedly opened the bag to check. It's not those gems, then could it be? Ruger looked at the bodies of the soft-bodied slugs in the sea of fire, but he didn't see any trace of magic gems at all. That's right. He nodded silently. These ghosts are not in the same system as the dark monsters above, and they shouldn't drop magic gems after death. But if so, why is Lao Guozhao like this now? Just when his thinking was deadlocked, Lao Guozhao, who had been unconscious, suddenly yelled like a dream. Be careful, there are new enemies coming. What? Ruger and the others hurriedly raised their guns and heard a scratching sound from the direction of the mud that poured into the pipe due to the landslide. Soon, a slender worm with a pink body and a pointed head emerged from the mud. To say it is slender is only relative. This thing is almost as thick as a python. But it is obviously not a snake. There are no snake scales on its smooth and tender body. Instead, there are some tiny bristles. With the help of the secreted mucus, it can run freely in the soil. Yes, although the body is much bigger and the head is very strange, Ruger quickly confirmed the true identity of this guy. Earthworm, a big earthworm that has been enlarged dozens or hundreds of times. What will be the attack method of this thing? Spray venom, acid, or paralysis? However, contrary to Ruger's expectations, this guy quickly straightened up his upper body, caught the developed muscles and pointed his pointed head at Ruger. Hiss. As the sound of the noise sounded, a high-energy ray with a little pink in red shot out from the tip of the earthworm. Are you kidding? Laser? Earthworms shoot lasers. Ruger was in a bad mood. Under normal circumstances, human eyes cannot see lasers. Most of what can be seen are particles floating in the air illuminated by lasers. I don't know if the particles in the sewer pipes are more special than those in the atmosphere. But it illuminates the laser path shot by the earthworm very clearly. Lasers are also light, and they travel at the speed of light. It is impossible to dodge this thing with human reaction speed. Even though Ruger wanted to dodge to the side immediately after being shocked, he was hit in the chest by the laser before he finished charging. Then, nothing happened. What is this? What happened? Could it be that his heavy combat suit can also protect against lasers? He was curiously looking at his chest, but he felt a burning sensation on his arm. He turned his head and found that the laser beam he had just dodged was swinging over like a spear. At this time, it was chasing him from the arm to the chest. It turned out that as he jumped away from the spot, the earthworm that fired the pink laser also turned its head. Ha, that's it? What else did Lugger not understand? Power, power. That earthworm can fire lasers, amazing. But how much energy does the laser consume? The power of the laser fired by it alone is not enough to instantly penetrate his protective suit. It can only penetrate the weak part of the sleeve without armor and cause some burns to himself. Well, the laser is scary at first glance, and the 5 pairs of weights are closer. No, it's just for scar removal. No wonder Lugger was a little scared, but Tia didn't react much from beginning to end. Whether it's relying on her Nephilim physique or the skills to enhance defense in shadow training, it's easy to parry this weak laser. With this power, is there any need to hide? Ruger, who always wore tactical goggles, was not afraid of being exposed to the sun. So he simply jumped up from the ground, picked up the shotgun and pulled the trigger at the pink earthworm. Boom boom boom. A bunch of deer bullets were thrown like metal rain. The earthworm, whose head was transformed into a laser transmitter, is indeed very technologically advanced. But relatively speaking, its defense is. I really don't know how this thing survived. Could it be that the person who made it is an environmentalist who pursues biodiversity mechanically and dogmatically? As Ruger complained, the 00 grade steel balls with hundreds of joules of energy easily penetrated the earthworm's pink body and instantly broke it into several sections. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai Chi. Chapter 32. The earthworms that emit lasers are also earthworms. What are normal earthworms known for? Is it a cost-effective fishing bait that can be dug out anywhere? Can it soften the soil and be a good helper for farmers? Well, it's all of the above. But the most impressive feature of earthworms is their abnormal hermaphroditism and their ability to survive even after being cut off. Although the regenerative abilities of different types of earthworms are actually different, some are weak and some are strong. But if it can be transformed into a biological weapon, it will most likely be a very powerful one. Sure enough, the remains of the earthworms, which had been beaten into several pieces by the Lugger deer bullet steel balls, squirmed, and then burrowed back into the soil as if nothing was wrong. Looking at that posture, it seems that he is preparing to reattach the severed limb in the soil and then make a comeback. But it's not completely without damage. The sharp-edged head fragment with the laser launcher, perhaps because it didn't react in time, kept firing lasers even if it was interrupted. As a result, Lugger watched as the earthworm's body quickly shriveled up and withered, as if the flesh and blood had been sucked dry from the inside by a predator. Tisk tisk, so the energy of the laser is its physical body. No wonder he buries most of his body in the ground and grows his body so long at the risk of not being able to move easily. Lugger curled his lips, walked over to the idiot's corpse, reached out and picked up a laser device with its own 7-wound star-absorbing fist technique. After taking a closer look, he threw it to Tia, who came over with the same curiosity. The power is too low, the energy consumption is too high, and it is not practical. For such a big body, you can only use it to fight mosquitoes and kill them with one strike. There is still a long way to go to make laser weapons practical. Even though he saw most of the earthworm's body escaping back into the earth, he couldn't be unwary. But the attack power of this thing was so pitifully low that he didn't take it too seriously. However, the next moment, he realized that he was wrong. He calculated everything wrongly. Quantity. With a far noisier crunching sound than before, dozens of pointed earthworms emerged from the soil at the same time. These earthworms obviously didn't have a high IQ, but at this moment they all pointed their pointed heads at Lugger's chest. Before he could recover, he saw dozens of lasers flash out at the same time, converging on him accurately. Hey! The surface of the protective suit that had been unresponsive when irradiated by a laser was immediately charred and curled, revealing the next layer of material. Soon it was down to the lower level again. Although the material of the middle bulletproof insert plate is not bad at high temperature resistance, it is not completely damaged yet. But the huge heat projected by those lasers still made Lugger tremble and immediately roll on the ground. How do you sing that song that is bigger than Lugger? One chopstick was gently broken, and 10 pairs of chopsticks were tightly hugged into a ball. Good guy, do even insects know this these days? Oh, no, it seems that bugs always rely on unity to win. While rolling, Lugger injected himself with a therapeutic agent, thinking to himself that he had complained about how others survived before. What else can you say about designers being dogmatic about environmentalism and mechanically pursuing biodiversity? Isn't it just that people's laser worms are useless? Now it's good. With his ability to gather a small amount into a large number and focus light into a beam, I am afraid that if the number increases, he can even defeat the nightmare monsters. All in all, after entering the evil spirit cave, or no, entering the charming cave, these earthworms are the most powerful ones. If 20 or 30 heads were gathered together, they would almost kill me in seconds. If there were hundreds of heads, wouldn't it be possible for one face-to-face protective suit to show through? Looking at Tia, even the girl who was as strong as the bomb had to rely on physical skills to dodge at this time. It can be seen how powerful the laser is when it is gathered into a beam. However, the situation does not seem to be that simple. Lugger was rolling on the ground, cooling off the heat, avoiding and observing. Not far away, Tia was seen using her flying on grass style light skill to avoid laser fire by avoiding several landslides. Although the laser earthworms in the soil were divided into 2 groups and chased 1 person each, they were never able to gather even a single laser beam. Could it be that the concentrated energy beams of these earthworms can only be used on fixed targets, and they can't keep up with moving targets? With this in mind, Lugger simply got up and followed Tia's method and started jumping around to avoid the laser. Sure enough, although a single beam hit him during this period, the incident of being hit by dozens of beams never happened again. That being the case, what are you waiting for? The following is the reverse time. Confirming that the fire control system of these laser worms was really bad, Ruger picked up the shotgun again. However, if you use deer bullets to interrupt these things, their remains will still run away. They themselves are in the soil, and the sea of fire from the big pineapple incendiary bombs has no meaning to them. Thinking of this, Lugger simply removed the magazine and threw a napalm clay pot at the group of earthworms with his backhand. Before the pot could hit the ground, he fired a buckshot and blew it up in the air. Seeing the napalm pouring down on the earthworms like hail and snowflakes, a dragon's breath bomb was fired, directly igniting them. The earthworms that had just symbolically avoided the broken pottery fragments before were now directly doused with burning napalm. Those in the corners were not heavily sprayed, so they crawled back into the soil and fled when the situation was bad. but those who were soaked from head to toe were miserable. Even if they managed to turn back into the soil, it would be difficult to put out the fire quickly. Soon, Lugger's system prompts sounded one after another. Kill the laser earthworms and get 2 points. Heh, technical soldiers are really more expensive than whiteboard soldiers. Seeing that Ruger had used the dragon breath bomb, Tia naturally followed suit and threw oil cans into the earthworm group. Soon the 2 groups of laser earthworms were scattered. However, before the 2 of them could breathe a sigh of relief, they heard the half-asleep old noisy roar again, "There are new enemies." The 2 did not dare to be careless this time, and immediately ran away and began to hide in advance. Soon, they found a group of similar long things swimming from the surrounding caves. This time it was no longer earthworms, but a group of real snakes, a group of strange snakes with colorful patterns. This thing, you can tell at a glance that it is most likely poisonous. Being bitten by them, tut-tut. However, what made Ruger inexplicably afraid was not their fangs, but the strange tail that kept shaking like a rattlesnake. Sizzle. The tails that looked like magnetic coils shook for a while, and then a flash of lightning came towards Ruger. Okay, after ultrasonic weapons and laser weapons, this time it's high-voltage electromagnetic pulses? Aren't these ghosts too high-tech? How much do the Lost Ones like to make biological weapons? They created so many gravediggers for themselves, oh, gravediggers. But, so what? The lack of energy supply in a living organism may be enough to deal with ordinary people, but they dare to bully me. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai-chi-ji. Chapter 33. Relying on the fact that most of the materials of his heavy combat suit are insulators, Ruger rushed forward against the electric light. Google search reading. Bang bang bang. Several buckshot bullets flew out instantly, and dozens of steel balls fell down, hitting the snakes and making them hiss. Kill the electric tail snake and get 2 points. Another high-priced technical soldier? Looking at the kill records in the system, Ruger was secretly happy. He thought that if he came a few more times, the points he could harvest would not be much less than those in the evil cave. But he was not happy for long, and more insect monsters surrounded him in the surrounding caves. This time, the new ones seemed to be no longer high-tech, but enlarged ants. Each one was about the size of a husky, and they were approaching neatly, which was still quite scary. However, after several rounds of intimidation, Ruger was now somewhat immune to this kind of mental attack. Seeing the ant colony rushing towards him, he did not retreat but advanced, and took a step forward to meet them and fired 2 magazines of buckshot. However, several green-headed ants spit at the buckshot, which corroded several steel balls. The spit was a ball of strong acid. Under the attack of this strong acid, most of the No-00 steel balls could not escape the fate of being corroded. The few that escaped did not hurt the ant colony at all, and lost their combat effectiveness. Seeing this situation, Lugger did not need anyone to remind him, and he turned around and pulled Xiao Tia and ran back. Although if he switched to armor-piercing bullets, the strong acid ants should not be able to corrode the tungsten core. But the scale of this ant colony was really huge, and he could not beat it with a shotgun. Things seemed to have returned to the way they fought the nightmare monster at the entrance of the evil cave. Although the monster seemed to be weaker in all aspects, Lugger also lost the strategic depth of the bloody wasteland. Nothing else matters. Ruger is now afraid that wherever he flees, a bunch of ghosts will jump out. For this reason, even Tia, who wanted to throw a pineapple incendiary bomb, was stopped by him. No, if new bugs surround us from the front, your sea of fire will block our retreat. Tia thought so and hurriedly took the pineapple back. But in this way, the 2 of them will flee aimlessly and will eventually be blocked by the opposite side. So she poked the cat head on her shoulder and said, "Old noisy, don't play dead, hurry up, think about where we should go." Tia originally wanted it to recall the original memory so that the two of them could rush in a direction. Unexpectedly, it raised its head and turned to a certain place and said, "Go over there, there should be weapons that can be used there." What weapons can be used? Could it be the weapons of the lost? Firearms. Ruger thought while running there with Tia. After crossing two landslides, he entered a relatively narrow pipeline branch again. When he found that the two people ignored the wide road and entered the narrow alley, he wanted to ask. However, before he opened his mouth, he swallowed the rest of his words. Because he had seen the metal objects buried under the landslide in front of him. Although only a few fragments were exposed, he quickly determined the identities of those things. The side armor of the Fennec African fox-wheeled armored reconnaissance vehicle. The front slope of the Martyr Weasel infantry fighting vehicle. The rear trailer of the BV-206 all-terrain transport vehicle. And the four pairs of road wheel chassis of the Weasel light airborne armored combat vehicle with a very old sense. My goodness, is this the vehicle graveyard of an entire armored infantry brigade of a certain industrial power in Europe? In the past, even if Ruger saw the full picture of these vehicles, he would only feel slightly familiar at most. And they are not like the familiar faces that are always in the news, such as Hummer and BMP, which can be called out by name directly. The whole picture is like this, not to mention the debris that are not sure whether they were bombed or demolished. But now, it has to be said that the mechanic template produced by the system is powerful. Even if the mechanic template comes from Los Santos, he still recognized these guys at a glance. Well, it seems that he has installed a mod for the game that collects military armed vehicles from various countries. Los Santos mechanics know African foxes, etc., is it related to that? However, it seems that it is not entirely. Because in addition to distinguishing the original vehicle models of these broken metals, a string of troop names actually emerged in his mind. That seems to be the military number of a certain country that has equipped these vehicles. Well, a certain armored infantry brigade is under the jurisdiction of a certain Mountain Special Operations Battalion. It seems that in addition to the Leopard 2A6 main battle tank, the main force of armored assault, all other vehicles of that Mountain Special Operations Battalion have appeared. What's going on? The mechanic could tell that the vehicle model was normal, and he even knew the military sequence that equipped the vehicle. Oh, it seems, it is not completely unreasonable. Ruger thought again, most of the armed vehicles of a Mountain Special Operations Battalion of a certain country appeared. Does this mean? Could it be that the land of the lost world that was smashed down by the fragments of the Dark World belonged to a certain European country in the past? He was still thinking, and Tia had already started to dig at the fragments. While digging, she shouted, "You think there are usable weapons here? There are only some fragments." Fragments. Weapons. Tia's words made Ruger's eyes light up immediately. He hurriedly ran to take over Tia's work and shouted to her, "Help me buy some time, I'm paying attention." "Oh, okay." Although Tia was a little strange when he was suddenly pulled away, she immediately turned around and ran back. He picked up his Remington 870 DM and helped Ruger be alert. "It's okay to use a big pineapple." Seeing her holding up the gun instead of taking out the incendiary bomb, Luger understood that she still had her previous scruples, so he quickly added, "I have to stay here for a while. Tia, feel free to burn them." "Okay." Upon hearing this, Tia immediately became excited, and in the blink of an eye, she threw several big pineapples out. In just an instant, a blazing sea of flames ignited at the fork in the pipeline ahead, which was extremely dazzling. Luger quickly gathered his mind and focused on the debris under the soil. Just when he heard Tia say the words fragments and weapons, Luger suddenly thought of an idea. At this time, he used the ability of the logistics space to directly recover the fragments with only the corners exposed. On the other side, he used these fragments to play with building blocks in his mind. Soon, he built a complete set of three-dimensional tank restoration drawings. Although these broken fragments come from a variety of vehicles and are scattered at the same time, they contain a complete chassis frame. In this case, as long as wheels are installed on the chassis and an armored shell is put on the outside, it can be used as an armed carriage. At that time, even if he and Taya hide in the armored shell and push the body of the vehicle with their feet, it will still be considered the simplest tank. However, he can do much more than that. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 34. As we all know, a modern civilian vehicle is made of the power system, with the engine as the core. Remember the domain name of this website: Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. Chassis frame, including transmission system, driving system, etc. The car body includes the cockpit, cargo compartment, etc. And it is composed of 4 major parts of electrical equipment. Armed vehicles add weapon systems and protection systems, including armor, nuclear, biological and chemical defense, etc., on this basis. Of course, there are also fully customized and upgraded electrical and electronic systems, including but not limited to communications, electronic information and command systems, etc. So together there are 6 major components: engine, chassis, body, electrical, weapons, and protection. For Ruger now, weapon systems are not urgently needed. There is no need to insist on modern electrical and electronic systems, as long as they are basically sufficient. As for the protection system, although there are indeed many different needs when facing the various tricks, the most important thing is armor. Among the wreckage he recovered was a relatively complete chassis. Although the transmission system was severely damaged, the tracks, driving wheels, road wheels and suspension shock absorbers of the driving system were still intact. Only some parts need to be manufactured and replaced, and it can be put into use quickly. As for the car body structure, it is for my own use anyway, so I can make do with it. To sum up, he is only one key component away from building a rough but fully usable armed vehicle. Engine. There are many scattered parts in the landslide soil, and there are also many engine wreckage. But no more than other parts, the engine, especially the cylinder, is cracked and it is too difficult to repair. It's not that it can't be done, but it's not necessary. The resources invested are much higher than building a new one. This is equivalent to asking him to use a barrel that was broken into several sections to make a complete rifle barrel. Stop it. The gun he uses is still a smoothbore shotgun, and he doesn't even bother to use a rifled barrel. Just because even if you have the raw materials and make it from scratch, that kind of gun barrel has very high requirements on the manufacturing process. Let him build one from broken parts. Even if there are functions such as unscientific recycling and reuse in the logistics space, rapid material separation and instant shaping. He didn't do it either. Who dares to use a gun that will be useless after just 2 shots, or that will blow up your own gun? In the same way, the broken cylinder fragments were reused to rebuild a complete cylinder. The engine blew up while the car was running. The picture was simply too beautiful to look at. That's why there are rumors that if the engine of a civilian car is broken, largely damaged, it is better to replace the car than to repair it. Well, the engine cannot be recycled and rebuilt, how about buying one directly from space? That's not impossible, but the points used won't be less than 4 digits anyway. However, Ruger didn't have other options. When he completed the novice trial, the initial equipment he obtained was not just the logistics space and the pistol. There is also a large trophy that has been sitting in the space unused. Yes, it's the Dodge Challenger muscle car with a monster engine. Hey, the modified armored muscle car is not the standard feature of the American Doomsday. It's just that Ruger doesn't have any feelings for muscle cars. Instead of using a muscle car as the main body with armor patches on the outside, he prefers to disassemble the car and install the parts into the armored car. The only question is, can a mere civilian vehicle engine drive a military armored vehicle? Even if it is a recovery tank based on the chassis of a Weasel-type light airborne armored combat vehicle? Luger was a little uneasy at first. But the next moment he saw a string of data popping up in his mind, he put this worry behind him. He still remembered that monster engine with a power of more than 400 horsepower. But what he had overlooked before was that the Weasel, which weighed less than 3 tons, used a 64 kilowatts 1-liter 5-cylinder inline turbocharged diesel engine with about 86 horsepower. Even if the biggest difference between civilian vehicle and military vehicle engines is not power but torque. However, the Challenger's petrol engine also has enough torque of 651 nanometers, while the Weasel's diesel engine only has 172 nanometers. The output of that engine is definitely sufficient. In the end, the biggest problem is just the natural flaw of gasoline engines compared to diesel engines. Gasoline as fuel is more flammable than diesel, and it is more likely to catch fire or even explode after being hit by enemy ammunition in the fuel tank. This aspect really requires time to study carefully. He was lost in thought, and Taya was also very busy. Although they had entered a relatively narrow pipeline branch, their current location was at an approximate hub. There aren't too many directions from which enemies are coming, just about 3 branch passages. It is easy to raise a sea of fire and maintain it, but it is much more troublesome to maintain 3 seas of fire covering an area of hundreds of square meters. Little Taya had to run back and forth in 3 directions with a clay pot of napalm in her arms. While replenishing fuel, she also had to find time to catch up on missed fish. That's really harder than the delivery boy doing the meal. However, if it's just a lot of physical exertion, that's it. After all, the Nephilim are very physically strong and are not afraid of this. But the problem is, those burnt ants will emit a unique smell. Don't get me wrong, it's not some special chemical reaction that produces poisonous gas. It's the smell of burnt protein. And roast beef, at least 70% similar. So, everyone knows. Little Tia's saliva can't help but overflow from the corners of her mouth while she runs. Lou, brother Lou, are you done? I can't hold on any longer. As she said that, little Tia took 2 more sips of the meat fragrance and couldn't help but shout, "Wow, it smells so good." Don't. Ruger was studying how to solve the problem of gasoline flammability, and hurriedly said, "It will be done soon, hold on." But. Ruger turned around and saw that Tia, who was sniffing the flames with her nose, was about to turn into a dragon. And even her body was about to fly out of thin air. Calculating the time, it has been 1 or 2 hours since the last meal. According to previous experience, based on the physical exertion during this period, Tia is really hungry again. What else can she do? No matter how delicious the ants in the flames are, is the freshly roasted beef more delicious? Roasted beef, so delicious. Tia took the beef handed over by Ruger and took a big bite, and she came back to her senses instantly. She added firewood, ate it, laughed and flattered Ruger in various ways, and it was really a happy time. Ruger finally breathed a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to come back to his senses to solve the previous problem, he turned around and saw several black shadows rushing over from the other side of the sea of fire. From the outline, they were undoubtedly just a few giant ants. How come the sea of fire mixed with red magic gems and napalm fuel failed to burn their shells? Have those insects found a way to prevent fire? This is not a good sign. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 35. No, that's not right. When the giant black ants passed through most of the sea of fire and revealed their complete bodies, Luger immediately noticed the problem. The dark outlines of those guys were not stable at all, as if they were covered with a cloak made of water. The so-called black is not even the color of the cloak itself, but more the reflection of the body under the cloak and the surrounding dirt stained on it. What the hell? A non-flammable liquid cloak. Can it still stick to your body? Upon seeing this, Lugger simply took out his shotgun with his backhand and fired a few rounds of buckshot at them. This time they didn't spit out acid. However, those No-00 steel balls with a diameter of 38 mm quickly melted and disappeared after hitting the water cloak on them. Only ripples appeared on the cloak. Let me go, what is this? Acid? Did these guys spray acid on themselves? But isn't the formic acid in ants flammable? Moreover, formic acid is not that strong. I'm afraid this feeling is more powerful than aqua regia, and it's comparable to demonic acid, right? If such a strong acid is applied to the body, even if these giant ants rush over and kill themselves successfully, they won't live long, right? What is this, the suicidal bee sting of an acid ant? Protect the pack and nest at the cost of your life? As for what? Luge said in his heart, we are obviously the ones being attacked, right? Why do you feel this inexplicable guilt? Shaking his head to put those strange feelings behind him, Lugger immediately changed the magazine of the gun. After several gunshots, the kamikaze ants that finally crossed the sea of fire finally stopped there. Even if it is as strong as magic acid, although it is not unable to corrode tungsten alloy, the efficiency is still not terrible. At least, not enough to corrode the giant ant before the tungsten core armor-piercing bullet penetrates its skull. After confirming that the armor-piercing bullets were still useful, Lugger quickly exchanged a few more magazines and handed them to Taya. He himself hurriedly turned around to carry out the final processing. At this time, most of the vehicle fragments in the shallower soil layer of the collapse were recovered by him into the logistics space. After triggering the acquired telekinesis, he didn't have time to calm down and study the superpower with unlimited potential. But some basic passive abilities gradually emerged. First and foremost is his ability to use logistical space to recycle materials. Whether it was recycling the thorns from the hard-haired rats or recycling the weapons dropped by the sinking demon. He needs direct contact with those things. He also used the same method when he just recovered the vehicle fragments. It wasn't until he recycled the Weasel chassis that he discovered that many broken and fallen parts had also been recycled along with it. So he tried to recover the fragments from the air, and he actually succeeded. There is a way to move objects with your mind under the action of the mind. For example, it's like the pros and cons in Star Wars using the Force to remotely collect lightsabers or even remotely choke people's necks. After getting telekinesis, Lugger had fantasized about changing his job from mechanic to Jedi. Unfortunately, I tried several times but got no response. Unexpectedly, with the cooperation of the logistics space, I can naturally master the mind recycling and remote storage. What could he say? Okay, at least the giant ant corpses that were burned in the sea of fire can now be recovered and fed to Taya. However, this is not all the effect. For example, if he wanted to use materials from the logistics space to build a gun, there was only one way to go. Expand the space and go in yourself, use the equipment in the space to process the original parts, and put them together after they are done. But now, he can remote control the equipment inside directly from outside the space to process parts. You can even place the finished parts accurately in any available location. However, as the quality of parts increases, his physical and energy consumption also doubles. In the end, he simply spent a huge sum of 80 points to add an industrial robotic arm to the logistics space. In this way, when he recycles parts, he can also focus on producing refurbished parts and put them together like building blocks according to the restored picture. When almost all the parts in the soil were recovered, a decent restored Weasel appeared in the space. Of course, not to mention the lack of an engine, there are also no passenger seats. To put it simply, it is just a shell. This is not to say that he has no ideas, the main reason is that if the engine problem is not solved, it is like the foundation has not been laid firmly. When you think about it, it makes no sense to install windows and ceilings on the upper floors without even finishing the foundation. He was originally planning to find a way to solve the explosive problem of gasoline engines as soon as possible. But after being charged by the giant ant with sour armor, his vigilance was instantly heightened and he felt that he could no longer waste time. So while Taya was walking 100 steps after dinner to add fuel to the fire and use armor-piercing bullets to kill the giant ants that slipped through the net, he simply remotely controlled the industrial robot arm to completely remove the Chrysler RBV8 engine. It was directly installed on the restored Weasel style next to it. Then make some adaptive adjustments to the transmission system, driving system, etc., and the tank will be completed at the mechanical level. However, even though the logistics space plugin has saved him a lot of time, building a vehicle is a systematic and major project after all. Just because the mechanical aspect is completed, it doesn't mean that other tasks will be easy. Not to mention the armor that is just outside and has not been welded. If you want to drive this tank, you must have a driver's seat, right? There must be driving equipment such as steering wheel and joystick, right? These have to be installed bit by bit. Moreover, although it is self-driving, comfort can be sacrificed appropriately. But no matter how much you sacrifice, you can't make the car look like a torture device made by the Minister of Justice, right? Less than 100 meters after driving, the driver shouted, I confess everything." The only thing missing is that the IAA water torture expert kneels down and sings Conquer. It takes time to improve these aspects. However, this is how the world is. The more time is needed, the less time there will be. On Tia's side, as the giant ants increased, she had to speed up several times. The napalm pottery jar that Ruger gave her had been used up by her long ago. She wanted to ask for more at that time, but she asked Ruger several times but there was no response. Looking at him again, he looked like he was concentrating on thinking and immersed in his own world, so she had to take out the big pineapple to support him. But as time went by, she consumed more and more bullets, and even the big pineapple was almost used up. Although there were a lot of things in her bag, it was not like Ruger who could skip the intermediate steps to buy finished products as long as he had points. If you live a life of idleness, there will be a day when the gold and silver mountains will run out. First, the incendiary version of the pineapple. This thing can form a sea of fire with one shot, which is the mainstay of her hands. Thanks to Lao Guozhao's reminder, she made a lot of this version of the pineapple. With their help, her sea of fire defense line was very strong for a while. However, when these were mostly used up, the situation took a sharp turn for the worse. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai-Chi-Ji. Chapter 36. Before the incendiary bomb, Taya's pineapple was mainly fragmentation type. Taya's family background is profound, and her master has passed away. To be frank, she is the person who has mastered the most lost technologies in the Rogue Town area. She naturally knows that for weapons like pineapples, fragmentation bombs have the highest cost effectiveness. Considering that the physique of the Dark World monsters is stronger than that of ordinary people, her fragmentation pineapples are all versions with increased dosage. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow Diamond Suit. To deal with these strange giant ants, a fragmentation grenade will definitely not leave any alive within a radius of 10 meters. Compared with the fragmentation grenade in the Ruger world, although the latter has an effective killing radius of 30 meters, injury does not mean death. Facing monsters from other worlds, the effect will not be stronger than Taya's fragmentation pineapple. Although in principle, the new explosives in the Ruger world, which have been updated many times, should have a stronger explosion effect than here. But Tia, who has amazing arm strength, can't resist stuffing more explosives into the pineapple she uses. It's called the pineapple, and its diameter is 2 or 3 times larger than that of the grenade, and its volume is the cube of the side length, so the charge is directly 10 times different. The disadvantage of the explosive performance is directly compensated by the charge. However, even so, the nature of the fragmentation bomb, which has more explosive power than the sustained power, still makes it far less effective than the incendiary bomb. Facing the giant ant colony that is unknown but must be huge, Tia can't kill them all, and can only buy as much time as possible. The sea of fire created by an incendiary bomb can at least last for tens of seconds or even minutes. Although the fragmentation bomb can clear the giant ants with a radius of 10 meters every time, their number is too large and they will be replenished in an instant. Tia has enough strength after eating and drinking. She doesn't feel tired running around and throwing fragmentation bombs at the same time. But she has limited ammunition. Tia's dimensional bag is indeed a rare treasure, and its capacity is amazing in the dark world. If Ruger didn't have a larger logistics space, he would be greedy for it. With Tia's temper of making bombs to relieve boredom, her small bag is already full of pineapples. But even so, there are only a few thousand pineapples in her bag. At her current speed of throwing 6 in 3 seconds, she will definitely throw them all in half an hour at most. However, thousands of pineapples, even with Tia's productivity, are not made overnight. That is the old foundation accumulated by the bomb girl since she was a child. According to normal logic, the craftsmanship of a craftsman will definitely improve with the growth of experience. On the contrary, the craftsmanship of this craftsman in the novice period. So in fact, the pineapples in Tia's bag are less powerful as they are put on later, because they are made earlier. This does not count the shelf life part. The weaker the bomb, the faster it will be consumed to ensure the killing effect. As a result, after just 10 minutes, Tia couldn't hold on any longer. Tia knew the bombs she made, especially some of the weird versions she made on a whim. She could even remember what happened on a certain day a few years ago when she made those special versions of the bombs. Just now, she threw out a fragmentation bomb she made when she ate the flesh of a spike devil, advanced spiny rat, a few years ago. That was the first edible prey she caught when she had just mastered the skills and went out to train. She had emptied her family's funds to this extent, and she immediately knew that her bag would soon be empty. "Brother Lou, are you still not done? I'm running out of ammunition." "Soon, hold on a little longer," Ruger, who had been concentrating like autism, finally responded this time. But the content really made Tia shake her head. "Still holding on? I called you because I couldn't hold on." However, she also knew that since Ruger said so, it really took time. There was no hope for Lugger for the time being, so Tia could only find another way. "Hey, old noisy guy, you've been silent since you ran here just now. Where are the weapons you mentioned? Do you still have them?" Ever since it led the two to retreat to the sewer branch, the Shadow Lynx has been silent again. Tia was busy fighting here, and she didn't need to rely on its extra vision, so she didn't care about it. Now that things have come to this point, little Tia has no other way but to pull out the Shadow Lynx again. However, she asked here but there was no response. When she looked over, she saw the big cat head on her shoulder with a confused face. He kept mumbling in his mouth. There were obviously weapons before. Why is there only a pile of scrap copper and iron left? Has anyone else come? Take it away. How is it possible? Little Tia heard this and realized that she couldn't count on this side. What else can she do? I can only fight back and hold on. The bombs are all used up, but the shotgun shells of Chiappa's 3-barreled shotgun can still hold out for a while. If the bullets are all gone, then I can only use cold weapons for close combat. But when I think of the 2 short weapons on my body for self-defense, Tia gets a headache. That kind of specialized short dagger is not impractical, but it requires the assassin's unique physical skills to exert its power. For ordinary people, it's better to just use an ordinary dagger. But the problem is that her assassin heritage is learned from her parents and teammates by reading the memory of old noisy. Shadow training, a spiritual technique that is essentially telepathic, can be passed on in this way to get twice the result with half the effort. However, taijutsu and martial arts, a skill that requires the formation of unique muscle memory, are exactly the opposite. In addition, Tia's true love is alchemy. Although her physical skills are not bad, her fists and kicks, especially her light skills, are not bad. But when it comes to weaponry skills, it's not that it's unsatisfactory, but it's hard to reach the level. Patting her already red face and cheering herself up, little Tia loaded the last 3 ammunition into the empty 3-barreled Kayapa. Her other hand came close to the scabbard of her belt and grasped the handle of the assassin's fist sword. Just wait until the last ammunition is used up, and then replace it with a short blade that is essentially a dagger. Brother Lu, how much longer do you want? I really can't hold it anymore. It was supposed to be an extremely weak sentence, but when Xiao Tia said it, it felt like the wind was blowing and the water was cold. Just when she raised her gun and prepared for the last long-range attack before hand-to-hand combat, she heard a regretful voice from behind. Come here, okay. Okay. What is it? Let me see. Xiaodi Ya changed her previous desolation and turned to look at Luge with joy and surprise. The next second, she saw the strange-looking thing painted in dark green camouflage in front of Lugger. What the hell? That thing is like arranging 2 squares less than 2 meters together, and then cutting off a piece of the front square diagonally. The height of the eliminated triangular block is probably exactly 1/3 to 2/5 of the total height. Even if you don't mention its weird appearance, isn't it too compact? What is this? Some kind of artwork? Performance art, right. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai-Chi-Ji. Chapter 37. Her emotion was not without purpose. The car in front of me, oh, whatever it is only 1.8 meters high and 1.8 meters long, and less than 3.6 meters long. At this size, it is a little taller and wider than a hatchback such as a Mini Cooper or a Volkswagen Polo. But there are no parents yet. For such a guy, no one would think it was a highly powerful weapon of the lost. Maybe people who have never seen a car may be intimidated, but who is Xiaodi Ya? She is the last lost technical master in Rogtown. She may never have owned a fully drivable lost technology vehicle, but she had always seen the wreckage. So when I saw this thing, I was naturally shocked and disappointed, with 2 big words written all over my pretty face, that's it? Yep, plus a big question mark. Lugger was mentally prepared for this. After all, Xiao Tia's current reaction is not the same as when he first saw this chariot. The so-called Te, with high emotional intelligence, is called a light tank. If you call it a little tank with low EQ, or even a tank cub, it can't say no. This thing is completely different from the positioning of main battle tanks that emphasize frontal assault capabilities. It is to use mobile and flexible capabilities to conduct reconnaissance and support special arms such as airborne troops without heavy firepower. However, a good woman cannot make a meal without rice. In order to form combat effectiveness as soon as possible, Lugger had no choice but to make do with it first. At least, after all his patchwork, he was finally able to build this thing in a hurry, right? It's good if it's useful, but what else do you need a bicycle for? Okay, don't be stunned. Come here quickly. Go to the gunner's position at the back. There is a leg locator inside. Remember to stand on it. With that said, Lugger jumped on the front hood first and got into the driver's seat on the right side of the front row. By the way, Tia was not the only one who was shocked by the appearance of this little tank. There was also the Shadow Lynx lying on her shoulder, pretending to be dead. But completely different from Xiao Tai's disappointment, Shadow Link's Lao Noisy was completely shocked. The words he was mumbling in his mouth before have now changed. How is it possible? How did this guy do it? How could he build an automatic carriage so quickly? Automatic carriage, the classic name for automobiles in the medieval world. Ruger's restoration of the small tank initially took place primarily in the logistics space. But when he was halfway through, he suddenly remembered that he still had Lao Naoko's eyes, so he simply moved the second half of the work outside. Anyway, the heaviest parts such as the chassis and engine are done, and all that's left is to weld the armor plate on the body frame. The main armor plate of this part is placed accurately, so it's not a big problem without the help of a robotic arm. In this case, from the perspective of outsiders who don't know the inside story, he just circled the car body twice, and the body armor was installed. It seemed like it was magic, so it was no wonder that Lao Naoko was shaken by this. By the time it woke up from the shock, little Taya had climbed into the trunk of the car reluctantly. Master, you really dare to sit up here? This is a magic method, how can it be so fast? Master, why don't you go down? This matter is so suspicious. However, no matter how noisy it was, Xiaodiya pretended not to hear it. Although she was disappointed with the appearance of the compact car, she became gradually familiar with its structural layout under Ruger's guidance. For example, she can close the main armor hatch above her head when she sits on her seat. For another example, when standing up, you can pin your feet to the stirrup-like structure at the bottom of the carriage to prevent the vehicle speed from changing too quickly and being thrown out. This design is also a crude solution because Ruger didn't have time to restore the interior, so it had to make do. Fortunately, Taya didn't know what the original design of this car was, otherwise she would be reborn without love. However, it seems that is only a matter of time. Because soon Ruger pointed to a set of brackets on the roof of the car directly in front of where she was standing and said, "I don't have time to get weapons, so I can only make do with this. You put the shotgun here and help me provide fire cover." Ah! Tia couldn't help crying now. No, after a long time of hard work, this thing is so small, but it doesn't even have a weapon. Brother Lu, isn't it too miserable? As for Ruger, while starting the tank engine, he hung the newly completed external armor plate in the space to the frame of the vehicle body. He explained slowly, "There is no other way. We don't have enough time and materials, so we have to make ends meet first. I know this is too small, just bear with it." As soon as he finished speaking, he stepped on the accelerator to the bottom, and the small tank rushed out with an acceleration that could reach 100 kilometers in no less than 5 seconds. Before little Taya could reply, she was knocked directly into the back of the back seat by the fierce acceleration of the chariot. "No, isn't it? So fast." "Hee, little one, of course it will be fast," someone smiled. "No, there is something wrong with what you said." "Are you driving?" the alert old Naoko hurriedly defended the master. "Yes." Ruger innocently patted the small tank-specific steering wheel on his hand. "A chariot is also a vehicle." The Shadow Lynx was choked by these words, unable to breathe up or down. Little Taya had no idea of comforting the pet that was loyal to its owner but was suffering from shock. She still ignored it and said directly to Lugger, "Brother Lu, I've run out of ammunition here. Give me some more." Upon hearing this, Lugger was about to redeem number 12 deer bullets and hand them to her, but in the end he hesitated and stopped and said, "Wait a minute, I need some ingredients." "What?" "Ha." This meaningful remark immediately made Taya and Lao Naoko tremble. Ruger was not in a hurry to answer. He controlled the external armor on the front of the vehicle to adjust it to a suitable angle, and then crushed the approaching giant ant swarm. Bang, bang, bang. The armor steel pieces placed obliquely on the external armor were like chopping knives, directly cutting the oncoming giant ants into 8 pieces. At the same time, Lugger waved and took out a box of number 12 shotgun wrapped in oilskin paper and handed it to Taya. While Tia was stunned, he turned back and turned the steering wheel, controlling the small chariot to drift 180 degrees in the branch line of the pipeline, and then ran over the giant ant colony that he had just passed. After that, he used the sharp-edged armor of a small chariot that looked like a hedgehog and a porcupine to move in and out of the giant ant colony. Crush and dismember countless enemies. This is the standard mode for killing zombies in the apocalypse and using combat-modified vehicles. When he was hiding in the ruins of the zombie sea, he imagined that one day he would install these sharp blades on his muscle car and go back to take revenge. But I didn't expect that I would use it on these bugs first. What's going on? Why do you give out ammunition when you kill those charlatans? Could it be? It was Launeokeo who asked the master's question first. Good. Lugger felt that there was no need to hide some things from Taya anymore, so he simply showed his cards. This is how I get ammunition. I know a way to make weapons and ammunition, and I can get the finished product quickly. The premise is that you have enough materials. And that material comes from enemies who died in my hands. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 38. Soul Alchemy. Xiaosha exclaimed. When he first heard the name, Lugger felt a little awkward. Taiwan novel network rightward arrow. But thinking about it again, what's the difference between the way he kills enemies to gain points and the way he harvests the enemy's souls? Perhaps this is the essence of system points? The points are then redeemed for finished products. If the intermediate process is omitted and only the first and last steps are retained, wouldn't this mean exchanging the enemy's soul for a product? Isn't this the alchemy of the soul? But Lugger scratched his head and said, oh, my ability can only be exchanged for firearms and weapons. Of course there are also tobacco, alcohol, sugar, tea, oil, salt, sauce, vinegar, barbecue, coffee, etc., Ruger thought, but let's not talk about it for now. Then, Full Metal, Soul Alchemy. Xiaosha added, it's called steel refining technique. Cough. 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 Lugger almost coughed his lungs out when he heard this. Good guy, the case has been solved. This little guy is also a time traveler. If you want to get something, you have to pay for it. Everything needs to be exchanged for equal value. Someone asked excitedly and anxiously. What? What is this? Taya's reaction was not what he thought, and she didn't even notice that the sentence was a joke. But she was a true alchemist after all, so she immediately replied, could it be that this is your alchemy formula, Brother Lu? Ah, Luge was confused for a moment, and then he hurriedly said, ah, yes, the formula, the experience, the essence, it's almost the same. Yes, it seems that the steel refining thing before was just a coincidence. So, this chariot just now. Yes, it was also made using this special ability and using those metal plates on the ground as raw materials. Although there are still many parts that I made alone, which directly cost the family a fortune, Lugger added in his mind. Wow, Brother Lu, your ability is really convenient. Can you teach me? Yes, I knew she would ask that. Lugger coughed twice and said word by word, I don't know what the principle of this ability is, I just know how to use it. I can't teach you directly. Oh, that's right. Seeing that Taya was a little depressed, Lugger hurriedly said, but I will study it slowly. If there is any progress, I will share it with you. Also, this is my unique skill and my biggest secret. Except for time travel. Tia, can you help me keep this secret? When she heard Ruger say that he would study and share, Taya's expression softened a lot. When he heard that the secret was very important to him and he needed her help to keep it, the little girl had already become excited again. "Well, Brother Lu, don't worry." Tia nodded vigorously. Not to mention nodding in agreement. If any spy heard this and wanted to run out and leak the news, she would be the first to stand up and kill that spy. "Is it true? Why have I never heard of the Lost Ones and this alchemy?" "Master, don't trust him easily. This person's origins are unknown, his purpose is unknown, his behavior is suspicious, and his appearance is hateful. Master, you must be careful." Before the shadow lynx finished chattering, Xiaodia slapped her into a piece of paper, took it off her shoulder and put it into her tool bag. Seeing Lu Ji looking over with an inexplicable expression, Tia just smiled and made a gesture telling him not to pay attention to a certain noisy person. Shadow creatures have no physical body after all. Although Tia used shadow training, the ability of telekinesis, or simply the master's privileges, and was photographed into a piece of paper, Lao Noisy still struggled to climb out of the bag. But this time, it didn't dare to make any noise for the time being. Seeing it like this, Tia nodded with satisfaction, said nothing more, and simply changed the subject. "By the way, Brother Lu, what is this little guy's name?" "Little guy," Lugger thought for a moment before realizing that she was talking about a small chariot, and he couldn't help but think about it. "Call Weasel." "No, compared to the weasel, this little monster has a big heart. It is strong in the weasel genus, no, even in the weasel family." "That being the case, then, it's called a honey badger." "Honey badger." Xiao Tia obviously has no idea about this domineering creature that dares to attack the sky, the earth, and everything in between. "Yes, also called Brother Flathead." Lugger wanted to let Xiao Tia see the legendary feat of the flat-headed lion fighting against the lion, and see the highlight scene of "you take a bite and I take a bite, whoever lets go first is the dog." But he still has business to do. There are still a bunch of giant, accumulation, ants, points, in front of him waiting for him to harvest, and he really doesn't have time to take out a tablet to watch videos and play with Xiao Tia. He could only reluctantly say, he is a brave man who, despite his short stature, dares to stand up to an enemy several times or dozens of times his own. After finishing speaking, no matter how Xiaodia used the creatures in the dark world as a template to outline the image of a flat-headed brother, he stepped on the accelerator to the bottom and rushed straight into the deepest part of the enemy's formation. Although his weasel type, honey badger type light tank has not yet had time to install long-range weapons, it is more than enough to deal with these giant ants who are also incapable of long-range combat. A Mini Cooper bumper car covered in thorn armor that looks like a hedgehog is walking back and forth among the giant ants. It feels like it is in a deserted land, just like a harvester harvesting wheat. Although the ant colony fearlessly rushed towards the iron monster from all angles, they were ultimately no match for this 3-ton, 400 horsepower creature. Of course, while madly harvesting points, Ruger also paid a price. Those armored plate blades are not magical weapons, and it is impossible for them to never wear out. In addition, there are special ants in the ant colony that can secrete strong acid, so the durability of the vehicle body and armor has dropped significantly. The sharp blades on the right front side of the armor, which are used the most, have broken a small half in just a short while. Fortunately, as the enemy density on the field decreases, Ruger can still find time to replace these armors that are only embedded in the vehicle body through a special frame structure. The so-called modular design. But there is another kind of consumption that is also not small, that is fuel. The 2LV Type 8-cylinder engine is a fuel-guzzling engine, which is already fuel-consuming enough on the Challenger, which weighs less than 2 tons. Now that it has been replaced on the modified Honey Badger tank, which weighs more than 3 tons, the fuel consumption will only be higher. Moreover, Ruger hits the enemy like a bumper car. According to the law of conservation of energy, It is a very simple principle that the vehicle attacks the enemy with kinetic energy, and it will inevitably lose kinetic energy when the attack is completed. If the kinetic energy is lost, it must be supplemented, otherwise the energy for the next round of attack will be insufficient. In short, Ruger needs to keep pressing the accelerator to accelerate in order to keep the kinetic energy of the vehicle at a high level. In a sense, fuel is the ammunition for this attack method. The more frequent the attack, the more power it will produce, and the more ammunition it will consume. In order to minimize the risk of the gasoline engine being easily detonated after being hit by a bullet, Ruger also thought about the fuel tank when building this small tank. Finally, in addition to the vehicle body fuel tank being made very small and having its own flame-proof and explosion-proof structure, he also used the same technology or design to build some quick disassembly external fuel tanks. This kind of item is only cumbersome to make, but the materials are not precious and the production process is not complicated. It is simply the mechanic template what the logistics space is best at making. As long as the design drawings are given, this portable external explosion-proof fuel tank can be made directly by extracting raw materials from the logistics space. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai-chi. Chapter 39. This fuel tank is about the size of a large briefcase. Google search reading. When using it, just insert it directly into the corresponding storage slot in the cockpit and push it to the bottom like pushing a drawer. It's a pity that there is actually a simpler solution to the problem this thing solves, which is to replace the diesel engine. Using it really feels like taking off pants to defecate. If not, Ruger would have taken this design to his own plane to apply for a patent and sell it. In addition, how big is the capacity of a large briefcase, and at least 1/3 of the space inside is various flame-retardant materials. In addition, the monster engine itself consumes a lot of fuel, which makes the problem of insufficient endurance of this thing even more serious. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow circled M. In a short while, the external blade armor that was corroded by the giant ant's acidic body fluid was only replaced once, and this briefcase-style fuel tank has been replaced for the 4th time. Oh, no, if this goes on, I'll be exhausted just by changing the fuel tank. It seems that I still have to rely on heavy weapons. Practice is the only criterion for testing truth. Previously, Ruger wanted to show off this first product that was completely designed and developed independently. After actual combat, it was still unsatisfactory, so it could only continue to exchange for heavy weapons according to the old plan. When recycling scrapped vehicle fragments before, although no complete weapons were recovered, there were still broken parts. For example, half of the vehicle-mounted general-purpose machine gun on the remains of a Fennec-wheeled armored reconnaissance vehicle. MG3, based on the famous MG42 machine gun during World War II, has been modified, adjusted, many times and changed to a general-purpose machine gun that fires NATO standard bullets. It is rumored that a batch of MG3 gun body nameplates have the 42 of MG42 crossed out, one is written first, and then crossed out again before writing 3. It is seriously suspected that this batch of so-called MG3 is simply the old MG42 gun in World War II that has been sold directly as a new gun after the barrel and bolt are replaced. Therefore, later generations often say that the MG42 was a classic and good gun during World War II, but the new MG3 made in the 20 years after the war is far from a good gun. If you dig out an antique from 20 years ago and just modify it to be compatible with current ammunition and sell it, it really won't have any real advantages except the low price. Fortunately, these things are not important to Ruger. He is not using the MG3 to compete with the PKM and FN mag on the opposite side, he is just bullying the bugs. The super cheap feature of the MG3 is actually the most eye-catching advantage for him. That means he doesn't need to spend too many points to repair this thing. Tia, put away your shotgun first, I got you a good thing. After confirming that the MG3 that had just been restored in the logistics space passed the live ammunition test, Ruger immediately said to Tia. Ah. Oh. Tia was shooting the half-dead giant ants on the ground with buckshot from time to time. Although she felt a little strange when she heard this, she quickly put away the 870 DM on the gun rack. As soon as she finished there, Ruger couldn't wait to put the long and slender machine gun that was more than 1.2 meters long on it. Try it? Ruger immediately said after guiding Tia to figure out the basic operation methods such as loading the bullet belt. Target, the group of giant ants in front of the left. Oh. After hearing this, little Tia put up the machine gun, moved it horizontally twice in the rear compartment to find the right angle, and immediately pulled the trigger. Squeak squeak squeak. The mustache chainsaw is worthy of its name, and the firing rate of 1,200 rounds per minute is terrifying. The sound is completely different from the da-da-da sound of machine guns in the minds of the public. It is similar to the sound of a high-speed chainsaw running. Xiao Tia just lightly pressed the trigger, but in just 1 or 2 seconds, dozens of bullets flew out directly. NATO bullets are full-power rifle bullets, with a muzzle kinetic energy of nearly 4,000 joules. This is more than 10 times the single-shot 9mm pistol bullet, and more than 1 time the single-headed armor-piercing bullet that Ruger likes to use. The giant ant colony over there was hit by this, and immediately everyone was torn to pieces or their limbs were scattered, and they were all killed in 2 or 3 shots. This killing efficiency is indeed much higher than Ruger driving over it himself. The only problem is that this gun consumes too much ammunition. The ammunition box that Ruger installed contains 200 rounds of ammunition belts, but Xiao Tia fired 40 to 50 rounds in 1 or 2 seconds. A full 200 rounds of ammunition can only be fired 5 times. Fortunately, the consumption is high and the harvest is also great. The number of giant ants around has dropped sharply, and it seems that it will take only a few rounds to clear them out. Ruger is still very satisfied with this. However, Xiao Tia is still in a bad mood. Although it was better than when she was full of that's it was far worse than when she was cleaning the amoeba. Why? Don't you like this gun? Ruger had some vague thoughts, so he asked tentatively. Oh, it's good, but... Ruger had already understood the rest of the words without Xiaoxia saying anything else. How to say it, it's like the set of words often used when giving out nice guys, you're a good person, but we're not suitable. For Xiaoxia, it's, the chainsaw is good, but it's not suitable for her. Because she already has it in her heart, oh, it came before it? Ahem, this feeling is older than this song. Seeing her forced smile, Ruger didn't care about the points and hurriedly designed the next set of improvement plans. After a few seconds, the plan was finalized, and the production task was directly issued to the main control terminal of the logistics space, and he began to disassemble the MG3. Ah! Brother Lu, what are you doing? Don't you need fire cover? Little Tia asked hurriedly. Well, Brother Lu will change you a good thing. What good thing? This. As he said that, Ruger took out the complete set of vehicle-mounted automatic grenade launchers HKGMG that he had just assembled. This thing is also a standard weapon recovered from the wreckage of the Fennec-wheeled armored vehicle. It's just that the degree of damage is much higher than that of MG3, so he was reluctant to restore it at first. But now for Tia, it has to be spent. The universal bracket and firearms are designed by Ruger, and there is no compatibility problem. Put the middle and rear connector of the grenade launcher on the bracket, and then tie it with a fixing bolt, and it can be fired directly. Although this grenade launcher also fires 40mm caliber grenades, it is similar to the rifle underhung grenades. But in fact, the former fires 40x 53mm high-speed grenades, while the latter fires 40x 46mm low-speed grenades, and the effects are very different. The muzzle velocity of a high-speed grenade can reach 240 meters per second, which is slower than supersonic bullets, but much faster than a low-speed grenade of only 70 meters per second. In addition, the design concept of high-speed grenades is used for vehicles that are moving fast, and the parameters such as the killing range need to be higher than the low-speed grenades used by infantry to ensure the damage effect. So overall, the power of high-speed grenades is better than the latter, which is a good vehicle-mounted heavy firepower. Don't look at the total length of this thing and MG3, but that can only mean that the latter, as an old gun, is really too long in design. In fact, the total weight of this thing is probably 2 or 3 or even 3 or 4 MG3s. But there is also an advantage, that is, if the size is similar, the way of use and even the feeling of standing and aiming after mounting it on the vehicle will not change much. In addition, this thing is also fed by a belt-type magazine, with 32 rounds in each box, so Xiao Tia learned it quite quickly. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai Chi Ji. Chapter 40. After listening to Ruger and getting used to it, little Tia turned the muzzle of her gun and fired the grenade at the remaining enemy troops with a bang. It's just that the ballistic trajectory at 240 meters per second is indeed different from the ballistic trajectory at 800 plus. The grenade fell to the ground a few meters away from the ant colony, detonating the trigger impact fuse. Although some of the fragments still rushed into the ant colony tenaciously, penetrating the chitin shell of the two big guys on the outside and messing up their internal organs. But in the end, they only killed 2 of them. Xiao Ya was very dissatisfied with this result. Cursing secretly, she quickly adjusted the muzzle of the gun to correct the trajectory, and fired another round. This time, the landing point was in the center of the ant colony. Hundreds of prefabricated fragments, including small steel balls, were scattered in all directions under the detonation thrust of more than 40 grams of high explosives, mainly RDX. The entire area with a radius of more than 10 meters and nearly 15 meters was shrouded in this fragment storm. In just an instant, the 5 or 6 remaining giant ants were shattered by the fragments and their shells were shattered and their flesh and blood flew everywhere. Beautiful, Luge couldn't help but exclaimed, thinking that Xiao Tai really matched the character of Bomb. His praise could not be more sincere. He just discovered that when Xiao Ya kills enemies, he can actually gain points. It was obvious that the system regarded Tia, who was fighting on the chariot, as some kind of extension of Ruger. Just like when a 2-seat fighter jet shoots down an enemy aircraft, mostly, it is the backseat weapons system operator, but when calculating the ace, number of kills is greater than or equal to 5, it will obviously also be counted as the front seat pilot. So Lugger, who suddenly got a lot of extra points, quickly decided not to dwell on the matter and accepted it with peace of mind. His morale was boosted by the extra income, and Xiao Tia's morale was also high. Not only does her whole body exude vitality, but her pretty face is also particularly dazzling. Yahoo wahaha. Brother Lu, this thing is good, I like it. The pretty girl shouted with a smile. Ha, as long as you like it. Just looking at her face filled with a happy smile, Lugger felt quite pleased. Then, the remaining acid ants will be left to you, let's speed up. When Lugger hit the giant ants with his blade armor to kill, he deliberately avoided those special giant ants with acid cloaks all over their bodies. The acid from those guys is so powerful that the blade armor can be replaced even if it is stained with the acid that seems to be magic acid. But if the main armor is stained, the small tank will have to be converted into a convertible. I don't know if Ruger is romantic or not, but the actual combat value of this car will be reduced by more than half. Now that Tia has been fully resurrected with her morale intact, Ruger is happy to leave those troublesome enemies to her. While Tia happily continued bombing, Lugger was not idle either. While operating the tank, he loaded the MG3 he had just replaced into the front compartment. Then install a remote shooter on it and install the remote trigger on the steering wheel. It is equivalent to changing it from a mounted cannon controlled by the weapons system operator to an airborne built-in cannon controlled by the driver. It can be regarded as giving Lugger himself one more attack method besides relying on brute force. Friends who have studied the principle of track steering know that track steering relies on the speed difference between the two tracks, not the direction of the wheels. Therefore, a considerable number of old tanks have no steering wheel in the cockpit, but two joysticks that control the track speed respectively. However, with the popularity of civilian cars, using a steering wheel makes it easier for drivers to learn to operate. In addition, it is not difficult to install a transmission system for a crawler type that can use a steering wheel, so most modern tracked combat vehicles also use steering wheels. Different from civilian vehicles, the steering wheels of military vehicles, which never have enough space, are much smaller. For example, this one just made by Ruger is about the size of two game console controllers put together. If he hadn't had time to improve the transmission system etc. due to time constraints, he could even directly change the steering wheel into a handle. At that time, something like a remote control trigger mounted with a machine gun will only need to be connected to the handle button using the modular port. The so-called gamification of combat weapons. While he was busy transforming, Little Tile launched a bombardment on the enemy with high morale. Boom boom boom, several strings of 40mm blessings of love were sent out, and Ruger scored dozens of points again. But soon, Xiaodia knocked on the armor plate next to Luge and said, Lu Ge, that, ammunition. When Lu Ge heard this, he thought that was not the case. With Xiaotia's indiscriminate bombing style, the 32-round magazine is definitely not enough. With this in mind, he hurriedly exchanged for 2 sets of ammunition boxes and handed them to her through the small inner window of the front and rear cabins. Use it first, there's not enough left. Xiaotia's eyes lit up when she heard this. With a little force on her feet, she lifted up 2 sets of ammunition boxes weighing 20 kilograms each and stuffed them back into her satchel. The whole series of movements is so smooth and unrestrained. Patting the small satchel happily, she smiled with dissatisfaction and said, Brother Lu, this is not enough, please give me some more. Good guy, is she trying to fill up her small dimensional satchel? You use it first, and I will make it for you slowly. It wasn't that Lugger didn't want to fill her up. After all, he felt a little bad about having used up the girl's inventory for several months or even years. It's just that although this thing is not expensive, the price given to him is not much higher than the cost price, but it still costs 7 points for 2 32-round ammunition boxes. With Ruger's current wealth, he wanted to replenish Tia to repay her, but I can't do it. When Tia thought of Ruger's soul alchemy of steel, she immediately understood what he meant by slowly building it. Then, why don't you fight them yourself? Don't you need their souls as alchemy materials? No, I can also receive them if you fight them in the car, Ruger replied immediately. Is that so? That's no problem, watch me. So, a certain girl harvested monsters faster. From the time the two entered the sewer until now, among all the monsters they encountered, giant ants are undoubtedly the most numerous. Of course, this is a number converted by volume, otherwise those little amoebas would probably be more. It seems that because of this, the organizational structure of giant ants, or the intelligence they show, is also the highest. Not only do they divide the work and cooperate with each other, they also know how to surround, block, play to their strengths and avoid weaknesses, and even know how to seek benefits and avoid harm. After the first few rounds of fierce charging, these giant ants seemed to know that they could not defeat Lugger and the other two, and they resolutely retreated halfway through the battle. Huh? Where are the enemies? Xiao Tia was obviously seeing a monster that knew how to retreat for the first time, and she couldn't help but exclaimed in surprise. Lugger was also shocked. Not only because these ghosts showed higher and higher intelligence, but also because he had seen new enemies slowly approaching from the corner of the tunnel. Those giant ants were not defeated and fled, but retreated in an organized manner. "Be careful, there are new enemies coming, this time, they are very strong," the Shadow Lynx also shouted.